It's the Friendly Fire Show, episode 240 for the start of July 2023. I'm one of your co-hosts, Steve Wright. Joining me, Ben Salter. Ben?
Yeah.
I got an invitation in the mail.
You did?
It's real. For your wedding. Like, you know what it's for. What do you mean?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what we're talking about. It could be anything. You're a very popular man, Steve. You're invited to lots of things.
That's true.
Very tough to make a wedding invitation. I had to make it myself because I couldn't figure out how to get one. Like, just incapable of figuring it out.
They don't just appear out of thin air, like when you're ready?
No, I tried to do like a template just on a website, whatever, and they're all garbage, like when you try to change the details. So I was like, I'm just going to make this myself. Did that. It actually worked. So now you got it.
And I'm sure it was a collaborative process with Claire, your fiance.
No, 100% me. She was in charge of distribution.
Well, okay, so we're getting really into the weeds. If you don't want me to give so much information about your wedding, please just tell me we'll just delete this entire recording. I'm going to be the MC. I noticed immediately that the invitation says Claire and Ben. Now, I don't know if that's because you always on an invitation put the female I don't know if there's traditions or not, or if you've just decided, like, are you guys Claire and Ben, or are you Ben and Claire when your friends talk about you? That's my question.
We'll figure that out. I don't know.
I'm not. I'm Matt and Steve, and I like in my own conceited, egotistical way. I'd like to be Steve and Matt, but no one goes for that. It's always Matt and Steve, and I feel like
let me do some workshopping on that, and I'll get back to you. It is because all the designs that I ripped off had the bride's name first, so I copied that.
Well, your better half, clearly, especially if she's listening. So. Now you're definitely...
No danger of that.
You're definitely
totally
in the good
fine.
books.
You can say whatever you like. It's totally fine. All good.
Good. Now let me really talk about what I think about her. No, she's great. And congratulations. Not yet. It's not happened yet, but...
No, lots of time to go. Got to plan everything. Good, yeah. In the meantime...
we've talked to... Go, you go.
We've got lots of Final Fantasy XVI to play. Are you actually playing it? It's like the game of the times. A little
Ish? Bit. Like, yeah.
That's how I'm playing it.
How many hours are you in, do you think?
2 hours of the demo, and then 2 hours of the demo again because my save didn't transfer properly, and maybe 5-6 hours after that.
Yeah, you're probably ahead of me. I had exactly the same problem with the save thing. I'm like, maybe it's because of the way we both did it. I'm not sure. I played on the discless Xbox. One of those things was right. I played on the discless PS5 upstairs to do the demo. Finished it, saved it. Put the save into the cloud, was cheap and bought the disc version, so I had to play it on the other PlayStation downstairs, and it just wouldn't... Like, I could see the save file from the demo on that PlayStation, but it just wouldn't acknowledge its existence at all. Did you have the same...
Yeah, I did similar. I did digital and digital, but across two PlayStations, and I didn't think about that because that normally would just work, I would have thought, but I haven't really had a demo save go into a game that I can remember recently, so
I wonder if we should have downloaded you didn't try downloading the demo on the second PlayStation and just like booting it up? That probably would have worked now that I think about it.
No, I went to the other PlayStation. This is getting real. You've got first world problems, two PlayStation issues. I went to the other one that I played the demo on. I opened the demo, then I opened the game again, but it already synced my cloud save, so it was like back into your new game. And then I tried to go out and load into the demo save, but it like wasn't carrying over properly because it's already like, you've already started this game. Anyway,
yeah,
doesn't matter. It's only like when you can smash through and remove the cutscenes because you're already watching them. It's like 25 minutes of gameplay.
Oh, not even that. It's like 15 minutes of gameplay, which is like, it's a weird thing. If I'm getting too far ahead, just pull me back. But yeah, like, it's super pretty. It looks like a PlayStation 5 game, but like it suffers from the same problem that like Final Fantasy, I think it was 13, did at the start. Like, you're just kind of running down a single corridor. There's not a lot of room for exploration. It's gorgeous surroundings around you, but like, it's basically like you're playing the original Resident Evil or like the remake on GameCube, because like everything's kind of like gorgeous, but like it's pre-rendered and you can't interact with it. You can't, like it's just like a really fancy skybox, really. Yeah,
I'd say that's probably a fair description. It's got that certainly has got learnings and influences from Western RPGs, but they're often quite open, almost too open to the point that you can get stuck somewhere and it takes forever to travel these massive worlds.
Yeah.
Kind of looks like some of those, but then it's got that very Japanese, very Resident Evil. This bit looks nice, but you can only actually walk in a little part of it, even though it looks like you should be able to get there. There's just invisible walls everywhere.
Yeah, like look off into the distance, it looks gorgeous, but like you don't get to go there. Like it's pretty. And the characters, like everything's really really nice. But then yeah, like all the good stuff is happening behind a cutscene. And if you're so inclined, you can just skip it. And like you still kind of get a sense of what's going on in the story. It's like a Game of Thrones retold by Japanese developers, is what I can make of it.
And yet I still quite like that, and I'm finding it, absolutely I'm tuning out in the massive cutscenes. I'm picking up my phone every time. I've got stuff to do. I don't have time to be watching a 45-minute cutscene.
Yeah.
I'm getting the gist. And that's often how I watch TV shows. Yeah, skipping them, you probably skip too much. The vibe from all the reviews, which I'd read none of them, but people just directly tweeted basically saying, good combat, great world, interesting characters, the story's good for the first 2/3, and then it just totally ruins itself and it disappears. Which, knowing that already, puts me off getting that invested in it. Of course, these people could be wrong, but it seemed to be a pretty common thread, and I'm just assuming it's going to get bad, and so I may as well not get too invested in the story. It's more about the vibe and the world and the combat and that stuff.
Yeah, like I don't know if I'm being too like it's not because it's a PlayStation game. Like the combat's good, but the combat's just very samey right now, and I want it to open up to more things. And I know, like in the demo, I didn't play the thing in the demo where it unlocked more things, so it's like here's a real experience looks like. But it's like right now I have one Aeon, that's like Final Fantasy X lingo. I have one of the summons. I have like firepower, like the power of fire, and like every big boss is basically just hammering square until you have to dodge once and then hammer square some more, and then like maybe do you use your R2 square and triangle powers, or do you save them until you stagger the guy and then hit him with 2 powers at once and then just keep hammering X? Like there's not a lot of variety in the combat so far, and I hope it opens up to be more engaging. It's also really easy. I'm playing on action
which
mode.
Which of the little rings, the helper rings, do you have on? Whatever they're actually called.
The healing one, which I don't really need, but
you don't. So I mean, I think that's a good feature. So it gives you 3 at the start and it gives you more later. But I found that they made it, even on action mode, way too easy, because one of them is like automatic evade, which is like half the combat is evading.
Oh yeah.
Another one makes you stronger, I think. One of them gives you your health back automatically. The only one I have on is like your mate, the dog, Torgal, whatever it's called.
Does he stay with you? I just literally I'm at the point where I just got the dog not too long ago.
So you can have him, no spoilers, you can have him attack enemies and things like that, which you can manually control yourself with the D-pad.
Yeah.
That's annoying. You can also just put a ring on and he'll just automatically fight for you. I think that's useful.
Yeah, because I keep stuffing up and hitting potion by accident when I'm trying to get him to attack, because I must have hit like left on the D-pad too many times and I'm in the wrong like sub menu.
You're in the other thing.
Yeah.
So I do think that's kind of a cool way to approach this style of combat, especially because it's so different for Final Fantasy. Some people will want it to be super easy because they prefer a turn-based game. This has gone the total other way, and that's probably the thing we haven't said yet. It's like a full-on change to action JRPG, which is not a common genre. Action RPG is, but not for Japanese games. Not to this degree. And so obviously the Final Fantasy VII Remake, it went a long way towards this, but this has kind of gone all in. And it's the reason I like it. Like before Final Fantasy VII Remake, never really got into any of these games. They were always just too slow paced, not interested in turn-based combat for long enough. Like I like it at the start, but eventually get bored of it. And I think I'll get bored of combat here too. I'm not sure that I'll finish this game, and I'm not committed to doing it. If the story falls off a cliff and it feels too repetitive, I'm happy to put it down. But I'm doing it now. And I think it's the right way to go. Like I really like that they've done something different. It's kind of like your Zelda totally changing it up for Breath of the Wild. Some people aren't going to be happy because it's different. It's very different. But it's just a lot more accessible. And I do find that the combat, even though it is repetitive, you get into a nice rhythm, like especially without the assist off. And that would be my tip. If you're finding it too easy, take off all of those rings, because you get a lot more manual control. And it's kind of knowing when to dodge, when to try to do a combo, when to try to use one of your R2 whatever powers. I still think it's quite fun. It is
Yep.
combat-y, like too much combat probably. Like you don't have enough time between it, but yeah, I think it's pretty good.
I don't like. I'm not saying that I'm amazing now because I've played Elden Ring and I'm so good at those kind of things. But like, the healing ring doesn't really benefit me because I'm not really getting hit too often. The only time I really get hit is like a character will telegraph any attack, and like sometimes I hit evade because I think it's gonna just be like a swipe, and it turns out to be this like superly overly long wind up, and then the guy like rolls around the screen for 25 seconds, and like I've hit evade too soon and I get hit, and that's when I get hit, and then the ring gives me back like half the damage I would have lost. It's just, it seems a little too easy if you're used to playing things like this, even with like assists off, really. And I wish there was like a harder difficulty. And like I don't mean to be that, like I sound like a wanker saying that. I wish it was harder because I'm like
Too easy.
I'm beating these.
Yeah,
challenges.
I do get it.
But
It does feel easy, but I also feel like it would be way too long. Like it's not meant to be a Elden Ring, Dark Souls, just constant pushing you down challenge. Like it's meant to be you get through the story pretty quick. And there's all these side quests which I've ignored to this point. I've kind of just thought this game's going to be massive. It's easy enough that I don't feel like I need to level up by doing side quests, which is often the thing in these type of RPGs, right?
Yeah.
So I've just ignored them, and now I feel like I probably pushed through the main story too quickly, and there's a bunch of stuff I've missed. But it's out of that fear that everyone's like, oh, this is a 60 to 80 hour game, which I'm not in for. Like I want to get it done potentially.
Yeah.
My thinking is side quests, if they were good, they'd be a main quest. But it does seem like there's more variety there. So maybe I'm missing out on some of it because I've dodged too many of those.
Yeah. The other thing that like really bothers me, like there's the gameplay to cutscene ratio for me right now is probably like 70-30. Gameplay is 30 and cutscenes are a lot more than that.
Yeah,
but then like the combat encounters, if they were more like, I don't need variety in terms of like combat animations and things from like the same enemy, but like some of the encounters, they just take too long. Like they're not, if it was like half the amount of time in one combat encounter, it would still be fun. And I don't want like random Final Fantasy, like random fights starting as you're walking through the maps, like Final Fantasy X style, but I just want it like to be like a little more, like you can put more enemies in my path, and I would probably enjoy that more than just fighting like scary looking night guy for 15 minutes, just because like that I probably do want more variety. Actually, I'm going back on what I just said, because like they only have like 3 or 4 big moves, and once you've seen the move happen once, like you probably will know how to counter it, and then just do that like 4 times in like 4 or 5 loops, and then combat done. Like it's just that side of things draining me and doesn't make me want to come back to it straight away. Like I will keep playing it in probably like hour-long chunks, but I'm not like super keen to get back into it.
Yeah, and I actually think an hour-long chunk is a surprisingly good way to play this game, even though it's so massive and you kind of feel like you don't want to do that. Hour-long chunk is kind of like you get your 45 minutes of cutscene, so that's almost like an episode of your TV show, and you get your 15 minutes of gameplay, and it almost works out every time that that's a good spot to pause.
Yeah.
And you haven't made very much progress, but it's a point where you can kind of pick up on from when you left off last time relatively easily, except for when you get stuck in one of those combat loops where it's like you beat all the guys, you think you're done, and then just more of the same guys come again. And it's like, oh, what do you like? That bit I don't like so much.
Yeah. How's your performance been? I've had the game crash a couple times in the same fight.
No crashes. I did see Digital Foundry said this is one of the few games they recommend playing on quality mode, like graphics mode, because the performance mode offers like no performance benefits. Doesn't really make any sense. And normally having a OLED TV that has HDMI 2.1, as long as you have decent frame rate, like decent enough, the VRR covers it for you and you don't notice the dips.
Yeah.
But they pretty much said it's so bad that it goes below the threshold. Like there's a point that it needs to reach for that to work. And for most games that drop below 60 or whatever, that's a non-issue. But for this one it is, which is a little odd because it doesn't seem that different. So I'm playing it on graphics mode in 30 frames a second. Seems okay.
The only time I had some really noticeable frame rate dips, and it was in the demo. It wasn't like you play as like the fire breathing phoenix thing, and that's like the first thing you do in the demo, but not that first instance. Like the second one near the end of the demo, giant frame rate dips, like chuggy frame rate dips, like ooh,
Yeah, I
like
think
you
I
were
had that
worried
too.
about the PlayStation exploding.
Since I played that again because my demo save didn't move over, I feel like it was better in the real game than it was in the demo. But maybe that's just my recency bias kicking in.
I can't remember. I just know
I
it was
will,
bad. It was bad both times. It might have been worse in one, but I didn't think
didn't
to think.
notice.
Yeah.
I do think it does look like a current gen game. It's weird that we're here nearly 3 years into this generation and we're finally talking about something which isn't cross gen. Um, but we've kind of hit that point of like it looks really good, the characters look good, the world looks good, but it means that performance has gone back to like early last gen where things are either 30 frames or they're struggling to get to 60, and it's almost like this generation started, everything cross gen ran like flawlessly because it was having to target like the Xbox Series or the Xbox One X and the PS4 Pro, and those games just run flawlessly on the current gen.
Yeah.
Now that we've moved to exclusive current gen only, we're hitting that point of things just going back. Like everyone's prioritizing visuals. They're not worrying about performance as much. This is kind of the worry that this is what was going to happen again, and will probably happen every generation.
Well, yeah, and it's because like these consoles are competing against the PlayStation, the PC, which is never out of date. Like if you want to have crazy frames, you get a 4080 now. Like you keep getting new components to replace. These consoles could run 60 frames when they were powering games, built for last gen, and we're gonna get to this weird bit where, and like we see that with Starfield. Todd Howard's come out and said, we can't consistently get near 60. We can definitely hit 30. So we're going to prioritize that. The game's going to come out at 30 frames. And this new current gen hardware will run it just fine. We're going to get to that weird thing where maybe 30 is the consistent standard.
Which happened last gen, yeah.
And as soon as we get to the next iteration up, they'll start designing it, and maybe we'll hit 60 frames in some games here, or maybe we'll get the Xbox, whatever they're going to call it, 75, just for a random number, and the PlayStation 6 that can run it on 60 easy. I like things in 60 frames, but I also just want them to work well. So, and it's worse when it underperforms and you see it start chugging. Like, I'd rather have a consistent presentation than something that's going to be too varied for, TV extra processing things that you have with 2.1 HDMI 2.1 to be able to cope with. But
yeah, it's going to be ongoing, but it is a good looking game. Like that's the main thing, and it's probably we're back in that point in time where you could play on the graphics mode again.
Yeah,
I think for this whole generation it's been like always play on performance. The resolution doesn't matter, the frame rate does, but this one's kind of flipped it around. So definitely a change and something that's very noticeable. More broadly, I suppose this has been such a big change for Final Fantasy. Do you think they've pulled it off? Do you think long-term Final Fantasy fans... So, I've been drawn in because I didn't really care for the old games, and 7 Remake convinced me to play it, therefore I played this one. Or I played the demo, which convinced me to keep playing. And I like it, but I feel like it might annoy or put off those really old-school Final Fantasy fans who are just too much like, this is too different for me. I'm not into that.
Well, I think there is a need to evolve and to iterate and to try to this is a AAA insanely expensive title from the point of view of what a stupid name. Square Enix Creative Business Unit 3, I think is the name of the developer.
Yeah.
How creative. Jeez, I'm inspired already. They want this to appeal to as many people as possible. They're making it frictionless, if I'm going to start using all these weird marketing jargon stupid terms. But if you are so diehard as an RPG fan that you want turn-based, there are games that will cater to this. It's just not Final Fantasy XVI. So I think this is better for Square Enix on the whole. It's going to appeal to more people. It's going to bring more people in, especially people who are in love with Game of Thrones, who maybe were disappointed with how it ended and maybe hoping this is filling that gap. They can play it in story mode. They can just breeze through it. And, the people that, instead of you picking up your phone, not paying attention to the cutscenes, they're trying to do that for the gameplay and then intent to watch the cutscenes. I don't know if the writing is strong enough for that to happen, but there are people that are certainly doing that. So I think it may or not be the right move for diehard fans, but it's the right move overall, I think.
Yeah, I think we're 16 mainline games in. It's actually more than that when you consider there was a 10-2 and or whatever. So we're putting more 20 or over decades. And I still feel like Final Fantasy is that franchise that has its big following, and it's a big cult following, and it has that big fan base, but it's not hit that mainstream like what Elden Ring did for the Souls series. It's still at the Dark Souls level. Like, it's got its big fan base, but it hasn't gone that Elden Ring level. And I think it has the potential to do that. Like, I think it's a lot more accessible, no doubt about that. A lot more interesting. The fact that it's PS5 exclusive, I think, probably helps it. Like, it's that you need to have the fancy new current gen console to actually play this. It's not cross gen. It's kind of Witcher 3 as well. Like, The Witcher 3 did that. It just became this big global hit. Doesn't matter that you haven't played the previous ones. It was so different. And I can see those like Western style, Witcher 3 style RPG influences within it. Like, it's very much learned from some of that. This game probably began development when that was like the big thing at the time in 2015, 16.
Yeah.
And so you can see that learning from it. Still very Japanese, as we said. Like, the huge world that Witcher 3 had you explore, it's not that. It's a huge world, but you explore it in a different way. I think it feels similar, and I really like the vibe, and I like just walking around and kind of getting the atmosphere of it. But it's not the same kind of Western style open world. It's still very much that Japanese style Yakuza, Resident Evil. Like, you're walking around, but you're in that confined somewhat blocky space that you can actually move in, which is so Japanese JRPG style of game. But then the combat is so different. Like, they've bought in entirely, and I'm glad they've tried something. They've tried to evolve it. It's not the same old, and that's what Final Fantasy is meant to be, right? Like, each new mainline game, unless it's a direct sequel, is quite different to the previous one. So they've stuck to that.
Did you play 15?
I played it a little bit. I actually remember when I realized that I owned it and I had a save file from years ago. We spoke about it on this show with former host Shane. I vaguely recall this episode because he convinced me to play it, and I remember him saying in his jovial way, while his man in the desk, the audio engineer that he was of this show, he kept saying, like, he must have. This is probably when we'd had a couple of whatever we were drinking at the time, back when we were less responsible hosts. And I said, you know what, Shane, I'm gonna try this Final Fantasy 15. You've sold me on it, which was rare back in the day. Back in our 5-man podcast days, having someone actually convince you to play the thing, because we all kind of had our different types of games we'd play. Rarely would we convince each other to try something, but he did. And I recall him saying, "You're gonna hate it. You are gonna hate it," and hate it. I did. Like, it was just too weird, and like, just couldn't get into it.
Well, I was going to say that I like 15 better than 16, but that's just me. It's a little bit more of the Western approach to open world, and I haven't really played a lot of side quests in 16, but like a lot of that kind of stuff in 15, but things that I found rewarding. It wasn't like the Ubisoft style, like here's 7 million icons on a map, but something that I thought was quite good. It was like a nice amalgamation of the two. But I guess, like, to that point, I'm glad, and the people who made 16 are making, I guess, still 14. So it's like a different set of people doing it. I'm glad it's not just like the same. It's not like a sequel. It's not going to be RE7 and RE8. Like, it's different enough, as it should be. Like, Final Fantasy is, well, apart from all the 10 twos and the 13 twos out there, like, it's a different set of characters. It's a different universe. It's a different setting, a different thing. The Final Fantasy VII Rebirths or whatever the next one's called, that doesn't count. But yeah, like, it's you sort of know what you're getting in for, like this weird epic tale with the fate of the something universe world is at stake, and it's up to you, and you can call on your magic that always stays the same, and you can get your summons, whatever they're called this time, and like all of that, like that to me is the core of Final Fantasy, and that's still there. It's just in a slightly different format with different packaging. I'm not as excited about it as I thought I was going to be. I'm not disappointed in it by any stretch. I don't think I would have given it like a 10. I don't think I'd give it a 6 either. I think it's probably like a solid 7.5 or 8 for me, based on like the, I don't know, not double-digit hours of gameplay I've had. Like, it's good. You'll get your value out of it.
Still very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It's probably somewhere in that range. I think it's come out at a very good time. So probably for the people who are double dipping and playing Zelda as well, you're probably just reaching the end of that, or did recently. There's the big hitters that are still just enough time away that you've got a good few months to knuckle down and play this. So do more of that. I like that it has probably purposely blocked in that zone when most games dodge. Like, it's so rare to have something, especially something this big and this kind of momentous and a console exclusive and something that takes hours to finish. Good time. So good on you, Square Enix, for putting it in this time of year when I know it's because it's the Northern Hemisphere summer and they try to dodge stuff right in that time and they want to have everything for the holiday.
Yeah. Oh man, July is bare bones. But anyway.
Yeah. But you can pick this game up, and if it is going to be one that if you're playing it, you're going to be playing for a while if you play through to the end. So
well, and you don't skip cutscenes. Apparently, you can get through it in about 10 hours if you skip the cutscenes. But
no, I'm surprised it's that long. But anyhow, it's cutscene heavy. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. But hey, it's pretty looking. Like all the cutscenes are pretty, so I'm not trying to do it a disservice by saying that. Like it's the whole package. You're playing and you're watching, and if that's your bag, then you're gonna like this.
Yeah, if you have a PS5 and you've ever had any interest in Final Fantasy, but you haven't been able to get into them or you've never tried them, I would say it's worth trying the demo. Like when it's there, it's free to play. You get a good sense of what it is. Play it through though. It's like a 2-hour demo if you watch all the cutscenes. The first half is walking simulator. So don't let that drag you down. When you get to some actual combat, I think it gets a bit better and it's more of a representation of the actual game. So give the whole thing a go.
And it ends on Flying Simulator. It may or may not be a good entry point into the franchise on the whole. Like if you don't have any patience for turn-based stuff, it's probably not going to work to then dive back into older entries in the franchise. But if you like the idea of all the magics and all that kind of stuff, like it's maybe it will fuel a new passion for you. Or maybe not. Or maybe, just stick to Final Fantasy VII Remake if you're sort of into this and maybe dabble in 15. Otherwise, it's probably a little bit too different to change. And it's also probably a lot easier than all the other entries. So you might think you're going to like try 13 or something and just get smoked because you're not ready for what's happening. But I digress.
You know what's not easy, Steve? Is buying an Xbox Series X because it's now going to cost you $50 more.
Oh, I was going to say, it's easy because they're available and they're plentiful in stores. But like you said, they're more expensive now.
This is a big loss for Xbox. Like, just by doing nothing, they had the cheaper console. All they had to do was continue to do nothing. They've also increased the price of Xbox Game Pass. I think that's more reasonable. It's a couple of bucks for either the console version or the Ultimate version.
$1 for Game Pass, $3 for Ultimate in Australia.
Yeah, I mean, so that was always going to happen. But the Series X going up to $800, it's now the same price as the PS5, which went up to $800 like a year ago. I just think that's a real tough sell. I think there's a huge market of people who just want a current gen console. The people who are buying at this point, like 2.5, 3 years in, not the early adopters. They're the people who, if you really wanted one, even though they're hard to get, you could have gotten one by now of either console.
Yeah.
It's the people who were either waiting for a price drop and you've gone the wrong way, or the people who have now just decided they've had enough of their Xbox One or their PS4 and they just want to play some current gen games, and they don't really care which platform they get because they're mainly going to be playing COD and a couple of other things, and it's the exclusives are not enough to sway them.
Yeah.
They're probably not playing a Final Fantasy. It's probably not that market.
And quite honestly, like a cheaper Xbox compared to what PlayStation's out there for, plus Game Pass, even though it's gone up too, like doing the calendar for games coming up for the rest of the year, like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is going to be on Game Pass. I think Persona 5 Tactica, unless I'm completely wrong. Like there's a bunch of things coming to Game Pass, so it's that thing of like, I spend a little bit per month, but you get like 10 new games, maybe 2 interest you out of the lot, but like you still get all these things. Like that was a selling point. And not to like try to defend Microsoft, but like at least when they put up the Series S by $50, you were getting twice the storage with the new black version S. Out of it. Like this is just, we're raising the price of the Series X and like it's the same. It's just give us $50 extra if you're in Australia. Not you Americans. We'll loss lead with you, but not for the Australians. That's garbage.
And that's basically my point entirely. It's like there is that market of people who just want the console. The cheaper one is enough for them to pick that one. Now I would expect that audience probably would pivot and think a little bit cheaper with Game Pass, but now they're the same price, I'll just go PlayStation because that's the main console. And it is. It positions itself as the dominant console, and it is. So I don't get why they've done this. Microsoft is so massive, you'd think they could loss lead in every market. It's not even loss leading really. It's the price they're launched with. They're not price dropping here. It's not like when the PlayStation wasn't the PlayStation. What was it? Sega Saturn had to drop immediately because the PlayStation undercut it. It's actually gone the other way. PlayStation put their price up and you just had to do nothing. I would have thought something as big as Microsoft could just take that hit. I get inflation is a thing. It seems like an odd choice.
Well, there's a whole bunch of potentially odd choices, but I guess and I'm thinking this through as I'm saying it, so I could be completely wrong. But as an example, like we're now in where everything from Microsoft's gone up. So games like Forza Motorsport, games like Starfield are now going to be $120 as opposed to $100. So there's that $20 extra per game unless you're on Game Pass. So maybe by raising these prices, like Microsoft is just illustrating, it doesn't care how you play its games. And if the price per game is too expensive, and if the Xbox is too expensive, but you have like a crappy computer that has a 1080 display, just give us $20 a month and you'll get Game Pass Ultimate and you can stream Starfield to your whatever you have in front of you, and you don't need a console and you don't need to buy the game. Like maybe they honestly don't care and that's enough. I don't think that's probably like why they're raising the prices to push people into Game Pass, but like maybe they really don't care how you're accessing these games, and games are for everyone. But it's weird.
I don't think they do care that much. Like they've said in this FTC case at the moment that there was that big time when the PS5 was massively outselling the Series X, and yet it was easier to get a PS5 than a Series X. And they've pretty much revealed now that's because there was a chip shortage, and there probably still is. And they diverted a lot of resources that could have made Series X's to build their data center or whatever they're calling it to stream all these games with Game Pass, whereas Sony just kept making consoles. So it was easier to get a PS5 even though it was selling more. So I don't think they do care that much. But again, it seemed like an easy win for them to just have the slightly cheaper console. Wouldn't make a huge difference to Microsoft's bottom line. It's makes it harder to recommend the Series X.
Well, yeah, like that's the recommendation. Like I'd recommend if people are sort of interested in games but can't afford two consoles, I'd probably say get a PlayStation 5. And, like, do you have something that has a screen that you can, like, connect a Bluetooth controller to? Great. So buy the PlayStation games that come out. If you have 20 extra bucks a month right now and you don't want to spend, like $20 a month is a lot cheaper than $120 in one pop for Starfield. Pay $20 a month. Anything that you can't play on your PlayStation, you can stream with Game Pass Ultimate, and you're set. Like, you don't need to get a second one. You could probably get a Steam Deck or something. Like, I don't know, like that's unattainable in Australia. Or like, I don't know if you can homebrew your Switch or something and like stream it to your Switch. Like the genius person, not that I'm saying that this is a legal thing and you should do it, but like if you could somehow get Game Pass on your PlayStation 5, like then you're absolutely set. Just like you have your TV, your PlayStation, and your Xbox stream machine done.
Well, and that's the whole in Microsoft plan is people will buy the PS5 probably thinking to do that, but then they'll just subscribe to PlayStation Plus because it's kind of we get a bunch of games on this, it's on the console I already have, it makes more sense. And yeah, I think Game Pass is a much superior service to PlayStation Plus, but if you're in the PlayStation ecosystem and that's all you're in, probably makes more sense just to go all in there and stick to that.
And if you demand like extreme performance, get a nice like if you're demanding something like of that nature, and that means you're sort of like I hate the term gamer, but that means you're a gamer. So like buy not a streaming PC, buy like a proper gaming PC and play Starfield and play Forza Horizon on your PC. Like you don't need an Xbox right now, really, which I guess was the point, but also it's to Microsoft's detriment to some extent, isn't it?
It's kind of come around to the play wherever you like, but then Sony's caught up enough that they're still like, but buy our console and play the other things also on our console.
Well, yeah. Don't play wherever you like. Play on this because you have to. So give us money because you want to.
Yeah, I think Game Pass isn't as attractive as it was previously, and now mainly because Xbox hasn't released anything on it. Like the whole thing of first-party releases day one, there just hasn't been any. The most recent one was GoldenEye, and that game came out 25 years ago. Like, let's not count that.
Well, it's the Netflix thing of, like, you get it for when you need it, you play the things you want, and then you don't pay for it until the next thing you want comes out, which is, it's few and far between right now. It's changing a lot. Like, I think at the end of the year, the things like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, even just to dabble in it, because you can, because again, if you're paying for it, it's free. It's not like you're, like, spending more money. You can at least try it and go, ugh, this isn't for me. Like, there are a whole bunch of things coming out that'll make it worth your while, but not right now. Not unless you haven't played Forza 4, Horizon 4 or 5, Gears.
And that's the thing, right? Like, the past 2 years on this show, we've been talking about how Xbox just hasn't had the content to really drive the key point of difference of Game Pass over PlayStation Plus, which is the new releases, which it doesn't have. So PlayStation Plus is not that far behind it at the moment, and it hasn't been for 18 months. And so that's why it's a weird time to raise all these prices. If
Yeah.
they did it at the end of the year, they did it after Starfield's dropped, after Forza's dropped. They let people buy the console for that, play that, subscribe for that, and then say December, January, they increase the cost. Maybe I could understand that more. Just a weird time.
We've had a bunch of warning, which doesn't make it much better, really. But like, if you were serious about this, you knew that you could get in a little bit cheaper. And like, I bought for myself and for my nephew. I spent like $400 on Game Pass Ultimate, and now like we're both like good till like it was only like $3 or $4 a month cheaper the way I bought it, but like I guess that does add up after so long of buying it. So like now we're good till like 2027 with our subscriptions. So like you're not getting any more money out of me, Microsoft. So
Cool.
like you still, I guess you still have time to do it. I think it starts 10th of July or something like that. So like get in while the getting's good.
Ultimate in bulk? Can you buy 12 months Ultimate Pass?
You can buy it in 3-month installments and just have to like apply a million codes one after the other.
That's annoying.
Yeah,
Why don't they
but
do the cheaper
like
price
the dedicated, that's why ozbargain.com exists. If you haven't heard of it, go to it. It's great.
Yeah, but PlayStation just give you 12 months, and then every 3 months they do like a 30% off deal. Like just
Well, hey, PlayStation, you're not off the hook yet either, because I should just cancel it. I forgot to, and I've renewed for another 12 months. So like that's how they get you. Like I just want PlayStation Classic, PlayStation 1 Classic, RE2 and RE3 put on the system, so I can like, and I'll buy them when they come out, so I can play them if they get taken off. Like Resident Evil, the original one, is off now, so I just want it to have it. Like I just hurry up and put good things out on your subscription services, people. Make it worth your while.
They've both become a Netflix to me. They've both become I've got it because I have it, but I don't actually really use it a great deal. Game Pass, in theory, is way more valuable because of the new releases, but there haven't been any, so therefore they're both kind of actually not that great at the moment. So we've previously been pretty big advocates for both, but especially for Game Pass. So I think fair that we've now they put their price up, revisited that, and realized it isn't as good a deal and a great, people always like best deal in gaming, and I agreed with that for a long time.
Yeah.
But now you're putting your price up. We've had a relook, and it's not as good of a deal as it used to be. Like it used to have a lot more new stuff coming out, and new bigger hits, not like little small games that aren't that great.
Yeah. Like I still, if people have a finite budget, like probably
there's a market for it.
The S and the new S, maybe, I don't know if the 550 is much better than 500, but you get a terabyte of storage now, which is probably more like 500 or 800 megabytes. Like that's still probably that, coupled with Game Pass, is like, if you're gonna game on a budget, that's probably the budgetiest way to do it. But it's whether or not things in the library suit you. If there's nothing that you want to play, having all these games at your disposal doesn't mean anything. So
yeah, well, we can go round and round in circles. We're back to negative Ben and Steve around the current state of gaming subscriptions.
Get off my lawn, Netflix.
We'll just go play. We just spent $115 instead, the same price for Game Pass for a year for one single game on PlayStation, which I'm playing. So I'll go back to that. Where do we find you on the internet, Steve? I'll do your line this week.
I'm so proud of you. That's right, AU. Yeah. Keep going. You go.
No, you need to say something. You need to throw back to me.
No, but I always do. I don't know. How do we find you then, Ben?
It doesn't matter. Ben_Salter on Twitter. Thanks for joining us this week. We'll be back next week with something. I don't know what, because there's no games coming out. Bye for now.